My name is Natalie Monroe. I'm 34 years old, and let me tell you, I built a $22 million business from the ground up. No degree, no handouts, just pure grit and sleepless nights. I paid off my parents' debts, covered their bills for years, and thought that would finally earn their respect. But I was wrong. Last Thanksgiving, my dad looked me straight in the eyes and called me a disgrace. Told me to get out of his house like I was nothing. That moment hit me hard, and I realized I was done chasing approval that was never gonna come. Now I'm sitting on the deck of my Florida beach house, finally at peace. Not because they changed, but because I did. And if you've ever felt invisible to the people you work the hardest to support, this story is for you. So, where are y'all tuning in from today? Drop your location in the comments. Hit that subscribe button and come along with me as I spill the tea on how losing my family actually set me free. So, picture this. I grew up in Brookhaven, Illinois, a sleepy little town where success meant a framed degree on the wall and a steady 9 to 5. My dad, Howard Monroe, was a high school math teacher for almost 30 years. He wore that job like a badge of honor, always preaching about discipline and education being the only paths worth taking. My mom, Donna, was a school librarian, all about order, routines, and kids who played by the rules. In our house, there was no space for big, what if dreams. The plan was set. Ace school, go to a good college, graduate, land a solid job, and build a life that mirrored theirs. That's what they wanted for me. But even as a little girl, I knew that plan didn't fit me. While other kids were glued to cartoons or slogging through required reading, I was doodling logo ideas in my notebook. At 10, I started my first side hustle, weaving friendship bracelets with custom initials and selling them for $1 each at recess. Made a profit in a week. By 12, I was on to personalized water bottles, hand-cutting vinyl stickers. I didn't call it a business back then. I just loved creating something people wanted. My parents? They weren't impressed. "That's cute, Natalie," Mom would say, folding laundry as I spread my creations across the dining table. "But hobbies don't pay bills." "Focus on school," Dad would chime in, helping me with geometry homework. "You're smart enough for something real." That word, real, stuck with me. Like the joy I got from solving problems and selling my ideas wasn't legit unless it came with a diploma. In high school, I kept my grades decent to avoid trouble, but my heart was in my Etsy shop. I launched it sophomore year, selling hand-designed planners and digital downloads. I'd stay up until 2 a.m., answering customer messages, packing orders, and figuring out SEO. I was 15, learning e-commerce while my friends wrestled with Shakespeare and calculus. You'd think it was obvious I was built different, but my parents clung to their playbook like it was the Bible. They threw a backyard barbecue when my cousin got into Northwestern. When I got into the University of Illinois, they gave a polite clap and started Googling majors with the best job prospects. I picked business administration to keep the peace. Funny, right? Studying entrepreneurship from a textbook while my real lessons came from trial and error online. College was rough, not because of classes, but because I felt like I was wasting time. I'd sit in lectures, my brain buzzing with ideas I couldn't chase. Professors droned on about theory, but I craved the messy, real-world thrill of building something from scratch. To cover books and groceries, I took a part-time job at a boutique in downtown Urbana. That job? It changed everything. It started in the fitting rooms. Women would come in, try on clothes, and leave feeling defeated. They'd grumble about clothes not fitting like they did online, about models who didn't look like them, about sizing charts that were straight-up lies. Something clicked. What if there was a place where women could shop and see clothes on real bodies, like theirs? Not airbrushed models, just regular women showing how things actually looked. That idea wouldn't let me go. I'd sketch wireframes during economics lectures instead of taking notes. I taught myself Shopify, Canva, and basic HTML. Every night after class and work, I'd hole up in the dorm lounge, building mock-ups, researching customer pain points, and dreaming up the platform I wanted to create. I named it FitLook. When I told my parents I wanted to take a leave of absence to build it, they shut me down hard. "You're 2 years in," Dad said, barely glancing up from his coffee. "You're gonna throw that away?" It's reckless, Mom added. You've got a good thing going. Don't ruin it for some app. They didn't see it as ambition. They saw it as me being a brat. But I knew. Deep in my gut, I knew I had something. 3 weeks later, I left school. I moved into a basement apartment with a busted heater and mold in the bathroom. My tiny living room became my office, my laptop perched on a wobbly fold-out table. My bed was my brainstorming spot. Every penny went into the prototype. I lived on ramen and coffee, working 12, sometimes 16 hours a day, teaching myself to code, writing pitch emails, begging local boutiques to let me use their clothes for test photos. Most said no, a few said yes. I started small with a handful of volunteers, real women. We shot photos and borrowed outfits. I edited every image, uploaded each one by hand, and wrote product descriptions like my life depended on it. 2 weeks after launch, the first order came in. I bawled my eyes out. Not because of the $43, but because someone out there believed in what I'd built. It quieted the doubts. The mornings I woke up wondering if my parents were right, if I was just a dropout with a laptop and a crazy dream. The orders kept coming. 6 months in, we were averaging 70 orders a day. I hired my first part-time contractor, a photographer named Leah who'd lost her job in the pandemic. By month 8, I brought on a developer to rebuild the site from scratch. I tried sharing these wins with my parents. I invited them to see my office. A cramped room above a pizzeria with one flickering light bulb and 2 mismatched desks. To me, it was everything. Dad walked in, looked around, and said, "This is it?" I showed him my first profit and loss statement. We'd turned a profit in month 4. He skimmed it and said, "Hope you're saving for when this flops." That night, I sat in my car for an hour, staring at the steering wheel, trying to figure out how someone could see what I'd built and still not see me. But I didn't stop. By year 2, FitLook had a full-time team. We outgrew that pizza shop office and moved into a real space with actual desks and a little kitchenette. Our user base exploded, all word of mouth. People were craving realness, honesty, a shopping experience that didn't make them feel less than. We rolled out a size comparison tool so customers could match their body type with past shoppers. Our retention rate skyrocketed. Local journalists called, then regional ones. A tech blog featured us, then a lifestyle magazine. The buzz snowballed into momentum. Momentum turned into revenue. I bought my first car, a used Honda Civic, and sent my parents a $5,000 check for house repairs. They cashed it. No thank you. At family dinners, Dad still called me our Natalie, taking a break from school. Once at a holiday brunch, my cousin pulled up a Forbes article about FitLook. I grinned, proud, until Dad leaned over and said, "They'll put anyone in those magazines now." I laughed it off, but it stung. By year 3, we hit $4 million in revenue. Investors came knocking. I hired a proper CTO and built a team that felt like family. People who believed in our mission, who didn't need a degree to see my worth. My actual family still didn't get it. I thought success would change their tune. Money? Awards? But it only made them double down. I was their silent ATM, their emotional afterthought. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my childhood hearing I needed to follow the rules, work hard, be responsible. Now, after doing all that my way, I was still the disappointment. But I kept going. By year 4, we hit $8 million. We expanded to Canada and the UK, launched a virtual try-on tool with augmented reality, won 3 industry awards, and got nominated for a Retail Innovation Prize. Dad's only comment on the award? Don't let it go to your head. It was exhausting. The people I loved most couldn't or wouldn't see what I'd done. I wondered if I was being too sensitive, too needy. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about wanting a pat on the back. It was about wanting to be seen, to be enough. That ache followed me everywhere. Every launch, every milestone, every award, it always came with the same quiet question. Would they be proud now? The answer every time was no. The moment everything snapped was just an ordinary Tuesday. I was deep in a product strategy meeting when my assistant slid a note across the table. Your mom called twice. Says it's urgent. My stomach dropped. I stepped into the hallway and called her back, my heart pounding. She picked up on the first ring. Your dad's been laid off, she said, her voice sharp and strained. The school's cutting back. Budget issues, he's done. I stood there, frozen. 30 years of teaching, gone. He was 2 years from retirement with no plan B, no heads up. What do you need? I asked, not even thinking. She paused. We'll manage. But they didn't. Over the next few weeks, the cracks showed up fast. Their roof started leaking. The heating system gave out right before winter hit. Mom's insurance stopped covering her migraine meds. I didn't wait for them to ask. I sent money for the roof. I covered her medical bills. When their car died, I had a new one delivered. When my little brother Kevin got into a private college, I quietly paid his first year's tuition in full. I told myself this was love. This was family. But deep down, it felt lopsided. The money poured out of my life, but nothing came back. No warmth, no thanks. Dad called it God's provision. Mom would murmur, "You're doing okay now." Like my checks just magically appeared. One night at a family dinner, I overheard Dad telling my uncle, "It's just temporary till I'm back on my feet. Natalie's business is fine for now." He didn't mention the endless hours I put in, the payrolls I met, the clients I fought to win. To him, I was just lucky. One evening, after footing the bill for a kitchen remodel they swore they didn't need, I sank into my couch, staring at the wall. No thank you note. No call. Just quiet. And still, I kept giving. I thought maybe if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. But all it did was teach them to expect it. I kept chasing their approval like a kid. Every new feature we launched, every speaking gig, every article with my name, I'd send them the links, the updates, the wins. Most of the time, crickets. Sometimes I'd get a nice or a thumbs up emoji. That was it. Then year 5 hit, and things exploded. We got featured in Fast Company, then CNBC. FitLook was suddenly a name in e-commerce. I spoke at a retail conference in LA, and when I walked off stage, the crowd gave me a standing ovation. A publisher offered me a book deal. Forbes invited me to apply for their 30 under 30, even though I'd just missed the age cutoff. I bought my first home, a cozy lakeside place 20 minutes from my parents. I thought maybe being closer would change things. Dad came by once. He stepped into the living room, glanced at the lake view, and said, "Must be nice to skip student loans." That was it. No nod to the house, the awards, the years of grinding, just a jab wrapped in a smirk. I smiled anyway, offered him coffee, asked about his health. He never came back, but the requests kept coming. Every few weeks, something new. A surgery, a tax bill, an emergency. My sister's wedding, her honeymoon, Kevin's laptop. It all landed on me, and I never said no. I was the invisible backbone of a family that still saw me as the kid who didn't finish college. One Sunday, over dinner, Dad started his usual lecture about the value of education, how kids these days don't know what it takes to build something real. I set my fork down. "Dad," I said softly, "you know I employ over 150 people, right? We're on track for $12 million this year." He didn't even flinch. "That's nice," he said, "but these internet things come and go. At least Kevin's getting his engineering degree." That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and let myself ask the question I'd buried for years. What if they're never going to change? What if I've been pouring everything into proving myself to people who've already decided who I am? What if I built this empire, not for me, but for their approval? And what if that approval's never coming? That thought broke something in me. But I didn't walk away. Not yet. I still held on to this tiny hope that maybe, somehow, they'd see me. Then came Thanksgiving. The one that changed everything. I went all out, ordered the food, paid for cleaners to spruce up their house, Bought the fancy wine Dad liked. Covered every cent of the holiday, down to the custom flowers on the table. Everyone showed up. The house was warm, full of laughter. For a few hours, I let myself think maybe we were okay. Then I overheard Dad. He was in the next room talking to my uncle. He didn't know I was there. Natalie's little company's doing all right for now, he said. But she got lucky. No degree, no real accomplishments, no future. My chest felt like it caved in. I stood in the hallway, hands shaking as 7 years of sacrifice, paying their bills, showing up, staying quiet, crumbled, reduced to lucky. In that moment, I knew. No amount of success would ever make them see me. And I was done trying. Can you imagine standing in a room full of people you love, hearing your own dad call your life's work luck? Feeling your heart break as the one person you've spent years trying to make proud tears you down? That's where I was that Thanksgiving, frozen in the hallway, my dad's words cutting deeper than I ever thought possible. Y'all, have you ever felt like no matter what you do, it's just not enough for the people who matter most? Let me take you through what happened next, because this moment, it changed everything. I wish I could say I stormed into that living room and let him have it. That I demanded he explain why he couldn't see me, but I didn't. I just stood there, my throat tight, his words ringing in my ears like a bad song on repeat. She wouldn't amount to much if her business tanked, he said to my uncle. No degree to fall back on, you know. Bless my uncle. He tried. She seems pretty successful to me. Didn't she just win some big award? Dad laughed, this sharp, dismissive sound. Anyone can win awards these days. But what's she really done? Just got lucky with some website. Lucky. 7 years, countless nights burning the midnight oil. A business I built from a dorm room with nothing but grit and Google. Jobs created. Women empowered to shop without feeling less than. All of it brushed off as luck. I walked back to the kitchen, my hands shaking as I shoved dinner rolls into a basket. The smell of sage and turkey, which used to feel like home, turned my stomach. I felt sick, like the ground was slipping out from under me. I didn't say a word. Not while prepping dinner. Not as guests started arriving. Not when we sat down at the table, surrounded by the fine china I'd paid to restore, in the dining room I'd renovated. I just watched. I watched Mom laugh at my cousin's med school stories, her eyes lighting up with pride. I watched Dad beam about my brother's internship like he'd won the lottery. I watched everyone act like the feast. The house, the wine, the candles. Wasn't all paid for by the business they called a fluke. And I waited. Waited for a quiet moment. A pause in the chatter. Then I set my fork down and said, I've got something to share. Every head turned. I hadn't planned this. The words just spilled out. Fitlook just won the National Retail Innovation Award. And last week, I got an acquisition offer. $22 million. The room went dead quiet. No clinking silverware. No side conversations. Just silence. Kevin, my brother, nearly choked on his drink. Wait, what? 22 million? I nodded, my heart racing. I haven't accepted yet, but that's the offer. Gasps rippled around the table. A few cousins clapped. Someone said, wow, Natalie. But my parents? Nothing. Mom gave a tight smile. That's something. Dad didn't even look up. Just kept eating, like I'd said the weather was nice. I stared at him. Dad? He finally met my eyes, setting his knife down slow, deliberate. What would you even do with that kind of money? He asked, his voice flat, like he was talking about pocket change. I blinked, caught off guard. Well, I've been thinking about expanding. Anyone can get lucky. He cut in, sharp enough to slice through the room. What happens when it all falls apart? You're still uneducated. The silence was so heavy, it felt like it could crush me. My cousin Jessica, the med school star, looked away, embarrassed. My aunt cleared her throat, trying to break the tension. Kevin stared at his plate like it held the secrets to the universe. 7 years. 7 years of building something real. 7 years of bailing them out. Mortgages, medical bills, Kevin's tuition. 7 years of hoping they'd see me as more than the kid who didn't finish college. Gone. Like I was nothing. My chest burned, but I kept my voice steady. Temporary? I said, repeating his favorite word for my work. Dad, I've run this company for 7 years. We've got over 150 employees. We've changed how people shop online. I paid off your mortgage. I covered Mom's meds. I paid Kevin's tuition. His eyes narrowed. How dare you throw that in our face? We never asked for your handouts. They weren't handouts, I said, my voice starting to shake. They were support, from a daughter who loves her family, even when that love never came with respect. We never said you weren't good enough. Mom jumped in, her voice defensive. No, I said, the words spilling out now. You didn't have to say it. You showed it. Every time you called my work luck. Every time you said when it fails. Every time you introduced me as the kid who didn't finish school. Dad shoved his chair back so fast it screeched. I won't be spoken to like this in my own home. The home I paid off, I whispered, barely audible. His face turned red, jaw tight. Get out, he growled. Get out of my house, you lowlife. My mom gasped. My siblings froze. The whole table went still, but no one said a word. No one stood up for me. I stood slowly, folding my napkin, placing it on the table. I'm a lowlife, I said, my voice calm despite the storm inside. Who built a $22 million company? Who supported this family? Who showed up even when you never saw me? I looked around the room. Flushed faces, eyes on plates. No one met my gaze. I'll go, I said. But let's be clear. I'm not leaving because I'm disrespectful. I'm leaving because I'm done accepting yours. And I walked out. Past the foyer I'd remodeled. Past the hardwood floors I'd paid for. Through the front door of a house I'd saved from foreclosure. I got in my car, hands shaking so bad I could barely hold the wheel, and drove until the city lights disappeared. Where was I even going? Honestly, I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't stay. Has that ever happened to you? Where you realize the people you've been fighting for aren't fighting for you? It's like waking up from a dream you didn't know you were in. That night, I checked into a hotel by the river and stared at the ceiling until dawn. My phone buzzed with messages, none from my parents. Kevin. That was wild. You okay? Laura. Dad was so out of line. Call me. Aunt Marcia. Your father should be ashamed. But from the people who raised me, not a peep. The next day, I called my therapist, Dr. Jensen. I'd started seeing her when the weight of carrying my family started to feel like a boulder on my chest. He called me a lowlife, I said, my voice breaking. No loving parent says that. She said softly. I nodded, tears falling. And I still want to fix it. I want to call him and say I'm sorry. She let that sit for a moment, then asked, if someone on your team, an intern, a junior employee, came to you with this story, what would you tell them? The answer hit me like a freight train. I'd tell them to walk away. She looked at me, steady and kind. So why is it so hard to do that for yourself? I didn't have an answer. Not then. But it got me thinking. When do you stop trying to fix what's broken and start building something new? Have you ever had to make that choice? I bet some of you are nodding right now, feeling that same ache. I knew I couldn't go back to being their bank account and emotional punching bag. Not after that. Not ever again. Oh, y'all, have you ever had a moment where you realized you've been holding your breath, waiting for something that's never gonna happen? That weekend after Thanksgiving, I was a mess, holed up in that hotel room, my mind spinning like a hamster wheel. Was I too harsh? Did I cross a line bringing up the money? Was I the bad guy here? Those questions kept me up, tearing at me. Have you ever second-guessed yourself so hard you start wondering who you even are? Let's dive back into what happened next, because this part, it's where I started finding my way. I barely slept. My dad's voice echoed in my head. Lowlife. It wasn't just the word, it was what it carried. The cold, hard truth that no matter what I did, success, sacrifice, a $22 million offer, it would never be enough for him. That hurt deeper than I can put into words. Sunday morning, I sat by the hotel window, staring at sleet pelting the parking lot. My coffee was ice cold, but I didn't care. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was Miranda, my ride or die since college. "I heard," she said, her voice soft. Emma filled me in. "Natalie, you okay?" I tried to answer, but my throat closed up. "Abby," she said, using the nickname she gave me when we were 19. "Listen to me. What he said? That wasn't tough love. That was cruel. It was abuse. And you didn't deserve a single word of it." I brought up the money, I whispered. "Maybe I shouldn't have—" "No," she cut me off. "You spoke the truth. That's not an attack. You've been carrying them for years, and they've treated you like a backup plan they don't even respect." I couldn't argue. She was right. "If someone at your company treated you like that," she went on, "would you keep them around?" "No," I said, barely audible. "Then why are you still making room for people who call you a lowlife while cashing your checks?" That hit me like a ton of bricks. Has anyone ever said something that just flips a switch in your head? Like, suddenly you see it all so clearly? This wasn't just one bad night. It was years of them pulling away, throwing shade, disrespecting me, and me letting it slide. I'd been buying my place in their lives with money, but I was never really in. That afternoon, I drove by my parents' house. I didn't get out. Just parked a couple houses down, staring at the place I used to call home. Why did it still have such a hold on me? Why was I still tethered to people who couldn't see me? I pulled away, and that was the last time I saw it. The acquisition deadline was looming. I'd been dragging my feet, telling myself I needed more time. But deep down, I was scared. Scared that if I sold, if I took something for myself, I'd lose any chance of them ever loving me. But here's the thing. Had they ever really loved me for me? So I booked one last session with Dr. Jensen before the big call with the buyer. "I'm terrified," I told her. "If I take this deal, I'm letting go of the dream that they'll say, 'We're proud of you.'" She looked at me, her eyes kind. "Natalie, when do you stop trying to prove your worth to people who decided long ago they wouldn't see it? When do you choose your peace over their approval?" That question kept me up all night. Have you ever had to weigh something like that? Your heart against your head, knowing one choice might change everything? At 6 a.m., I sent the email. I'm ready to proceed with the acquisition. One request. I want to relocate operations to Florida. My hands were trembling as I hit send, not from doubt, but from the weight of finally choosing myself. I wanted distance, sunshine, a fresh start where I wasn't haunted by the house of people who thought my life was a fluke. Hours later, the reply came. "We're thrilled to move forward. Florida works. Welcome to your next chapter." Things moved fast after that. The deal was set up with an earnout, so I'd lead the division for 3 years. In January, the first payment, $11.2 million after taxes, hit my account. For the first time, I had more money than I knew what to do with, and no one to share it with. My parents? Radio silence. No call. No text. No congrats. Just a big, empty void that stung more than I expected. I moved to Tampa in February. The beach house I bought wasn't some fancy mansion, but it had huge windows, palm trees framing every view, and a breeze that felt like a hug from the universe. For once, I picked something for joy, not just practicality. I painted the walls bright colors. Hired a designer who asked, "How do you want this space to feel?" I didn't hesitate. Like freedom. The day I moved in, I stood barefoot on the balcony, wine in hand, watching the sunset melt into the Gulf like a painting. This was mine. Not for them. Not for show. Just for me. Have you ever had a moment where you felt like you could finally breathe? 2 weeks later, I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, my heart stopped. My mom. Standing there, small and pale against the tropical backdrop, clutching her purse like it was armor. "Mom," I said, stunned. "What? How did you—" "Your assistant gave me the address," she said softly, "when I called your office." I stepped aside and she walked in, her eyes scanning the bright open space. "It's bright," she said, which for her was practically a rave review. We sat on the deck, the silence between us heavy as a storm cloud. Finally, she spoke. "Your father doesn't know I'm here." I nodded, waiting. She took a shaky breath. "We're struggling, Natalie. Property taxes doubled. My treatments aren't covered anymore. We need some help." There it was. No apology. No, "I'm sorry he hurt you." Just another ask for money. I looked at her, then out at the waves, my heart twisting. "I can't," I said gently. She blinked, confused. "Can't or won't?" "I won't," I said. "Not until something changes." Her face hardened. "This is still about Thanksgiving?" "This is about everything," I said, my voice steady. "Mom, he called me a lowlife. You didn't say a word. You let it happen. And now you're here, not to talk, not to fix things, just to ask for more." She stiffened. "We're your parents." "And I was your daughter," I said, my voice breaking just a little. "For years, a daughter you dismissed, belittled, disrespected, while taking every dollar I gave." Her lips pressed tight. "So that's it? No help unless we grovel?" "I don't want groveling," I said. "I want respect, acknowledgement." She stood, her voice trembling. "Success has changed you." "No," I said, calm but firm. "It showed me who you are." She walked out without looking back, and I let her go. Have you ever had to do that? Let someone walk away, knowing it might be for good, but feeling like you're finally standing up for yourself? That night, I sat on the beach, the tide rolling in, sand cool under my feet. I thought it would hurt more, but instead I felt free. Like I'd finally stopped knocking on a door that was never gonna open. I whispered a thank you to the younger me, the one who kept going, who built something beautiful despite it all, for finally choosing herself. And I swear, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, like they were cheering me on. Have you ever felt that ache of walking away from something you love, but knowing deep down it's the only way to save yourself? That's where I was, sitting on my deck in Florida, the ocean stretching out endless before me, wondering if I'd ever stop missing them, wondering if they missed me at all, or if they just didn't care. Have you ever been scared that the people you love might feel nothing for you? That kind of silence. It's heavy. Let me pull you into what happened next, because this part of the story is where I started to find my footing. And if you're feeling this too, drop a comment below. Where are you at in your journey? I thought walking out that Thanksgiving was the hardest thing I'd ever do. But it wasn't. The real battle was staying gone. Some mornings, even with Florida's sunshine pouring in, I'd wake up with this tightness in my chest, like I couldn't quite breathe. I'd sit out on the deck, coffee in hand, staring at the waves, asking myself if they were mad. Or worse, if I was just nothing to them. Because indifference? That cuts deeper than anger ever could. There's the strange emptiness when you stop chasing approval from the people you love. It's like moving into a house with no furniture. There's space, sure, but it's so quiet. Too quiet. Have you ever felt that kind of hollow? To fill it, I threw myself into work. The move to Florida went smoother than I expected. The parent company kept their word, letting FitLook run mostly on its own. I built a hybrid team. Some folks in Tampa, some remote, and leased this gorgeous office with glass walls and sunlight streaming in every morning. For the first time in forever, work didn't feel like I was running from something. It felt like I was building on solid ground. But I needed more. Something deeper. That's when the idea hit me, and it wouldn't let go. A mentorship program. I remembered being 19, full of dreams but no degree, feeling so alone. Nobody was out there cheering for girls like me, taking the road less traveled. So I created the Untraditional Founders Initiative. We paired self-taught entrepreneurs with mentors who got it, who knew the hustle of building something from nothing. No resumes required, no GPAS, just raw vision and heart. At our first meeting, I stood in front of 20 young dreamers and said, education isn't just classrooms and diplomas. Some of the best lessons come from life. They clapped, but more than that, they listened. And y'all, that moment stitched something back together in me. Have you ever done something that felt like it was healing a piece of your soul? I started sleeping better, laughing louder, finding joy in the little things, like sunset beach walks, a quirky yoga class, or the paddleboarding instructor who kept saying, stop overthinking, just trust the water. One afternoon, I took her advice for real. I let myself fall into the water, into the moment, and laughed so hard I could barely breathe. It was silly, messy, and so freeing. When was the last time you let yourself just be like that? That night, I cooked dinner without rushing, danced in my kitchen to some old school tunes, didn't check my email once. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was just me. And that felt brand new. 6 months after the move, Emma called. Hey, she said, her voice soft, almost shy. I'm coming to Florida. Can I see you? My heart skipped. Always. She showed up that weekend, standing on my doorstep with a nervous smile and red-rimmed eyes. This place is amazing, she said, stepping into the living room. It's so you. We sat on the deck for hours, the Gulf breeze wrapping around us. She spilled everything. How the family acted like I'd just faded away. How Dad pretended nothing happened. How Mom changed the subject whenever my name came up. I tried standing up for you, she said. At Easter, I reminded them of everything you did. Dad called me disrespectful. Mom just cried. Her voice broke. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I grabbed her hand across the table. You don't owe me anything. I do, she said, eyes fierce. I let them erase you, but you kept us afloat. I see it now. And I'm so proud of you, Natalie. I really am. I didn't know how much I needed those words until tears slipped down my face. Not big sobs, just quiet relief, like a knot loosening in my chest. Has anyone ever said something that felt like a balm to your heart? Emma stayed 4 days. We walked the beach at night, barefoot in the surf, talking like we were kids again. She told me stories I'd never heard, how she always felt she had to shrink to avoid their criticism. We were raised to perform, she said, not to be real. And she was so right. Now we were figuring out how to unlearn that together. That summer, something wild happened. My TED Talk went viral. It was about success without credentials, redefining worth, and how sometimes the people closest to us are the ones most scared of our growth. I spoke from the heart, no filter, and the world heard me. My inbox exploded, messages from strangers who saw their own lives in mine. People who'd walked away from toxic families, people who'd built something from nothing, people who'd never been told they were enough. One email stopped me cold. A woman in her 50s wrote, I left my parents at 42. They called me selfish too. But choosing myself saved my life. Thank you for saying what so many of us feel but can't speak. Y'all, have you ever felt like your story might be someone else's lifeline? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear. That night, I stood on the beach, waves lapping at my knees, and whispered, I'm not alone. For the first time, I believed it. In August, Mark called. Dad had a minor heart attack, he said. He's stable, but it was a scare. Thought you should know. My stomach dropped. Old instincts screamed, fix it, help, rush in. But I stayed still. Are you visiting him? I asked. Already did, he said. He's still dad. I nodded, though he couldn't see. That night, I sat on the deck with a glass of wine, staring at the dark sea. I wrote a note, wishing you a full recovery. That's all. No call, no check, no rescue, just a boundary. And it held. Have you ever set a boundary that felt like reclaiming a piece of yourself? In September, I hosted a little gathering at my place. Close friends, some mentees from the program, and Emma. We laughed, played music, ate grilled seafood on the patio. As the sun sank, painting the deck gold, Emma raised her glass. To my sister, Natalie, she said. She chose herself when it was hard. She broke a cycle. She built something beautiful. Not just a company, but a life that's real and whole. Here's to walking away when you need to, and finding peace on the other side. The clink of glasses felt like a heartbeat. I looked around at those faces, glowing in the twilight. People who saw me, who didn't need a degree to respect me, who came for me, not what I could give. And I realized this was family too. Chosen family. The kind that cheers your growth, not punishes it. The kind I'd always deserved. Who's in your chosen family? Drop a comment. I'm curious. That night, I walked the beach alone, stars blazing above. I made a quiet promise. To never shrink for anyone's comfort, to never trade peace for approval, to always choose myself first. And in that promise, I found something stronger than love. I found wholeness. Have you ever found yourself staring at the phone, hoping for a message that never comes? That ache of waiting for someone to see you, to say they're sorry, to just care? That's where I was, a year after moving to Florida, sitting on my deck with the ocean whispering in the background, still wondering if they missed me, or if I was just a ghost in their world now. Have you ever felt like you're holding on to a hope that's weighing you down? Stick with me, because this part of my story, it's about learning to let go and finding what's waiting on the other side. And if this hits home, drop a comment below. Where are you finding your peace? A year flew by faster than I thought it could. Not because it was packed with chaos, but because it was so calm. Peace was new for me. And let me tell you, it took some getting used to. I used to measure my life by how much I was juggling. Goals, deadlines, proving people wrong. Now, it was quieter moments that mattered. The warmth of morning sun on my bare feet, long walks without glancing at my phone. The way the tide seemed to breathe with me. Has anyone else had to relearn what a good day feels like? But peace doesn't mean the past stays quiet. Reflection sneaks in, and it's not always gentle. It had hit me in the small moments, like sipping coffee in my kitchen, catching myself checking my phone for a text from mom that never came, or seeing a dad and his daughter laughing at a beach cafe, their joy twisting something sharp in my chest. Have you ever had a memory catch you off guard like that? The dreams were the worst. These weird, broken scenes where I'd stand in our old living room, trying to show Dad my work. A website, a check, a photo of my team. But he'd just keep talking about stocks or bills, never looking at me. I'd wake up with my fists clenched, an ache in my ribs that felt like it'd never leave. Trauma doesn't vanish just because you move to a pretty place. It's in your bones, in the way you flinch at a raised voice or brace for judgment even when you're safe. But here's the difference now. I saw it. I knew it was there, and I had ways to face it. I kept up with Dr. Jensen over Zoom, joined a support group for adult kids of emotionally immature parents. We met every Thursday night online, a mix of folks, some cut off from their families, some still trying to make it work. All of us grieving something that was never quite right. One night, someone said something that clicked. We don't heal by pretending it didn't happen. We heal by living like we deserved better all along. That hit me deep. Have you ever heard a line that just rearranges how you see everything? I scribbled it on a sticky note and stuck it on my bathroom mirror. Live like you deserved better. Then I added another. Stop apologizing for surviving. And one more. You don't need permission to outgrow them. I was done playing a game where the rules kept shifting. It was time to play my own. What's a mantra you've leaned on to keep going? Share it below. I'd love to hear. In February, the 1-year mark of the acquisition rolled around. I hit every goal for the earnout, and the second payout, $10 million, landed in my account. I didn't pop champagne or post about it online. Instead, I celebrated slow. Took a long, barefoot walk on the beach in the morning chill, whispering thanks with every step. Not just for the money or the success, but for the courage to say enough. To walk away and not look back. What's a quiet way you've celebrated a big moment? That same week, I got an invite to speak at a global women's leadership summit. The theme, redefining power. I almost said no. Speaking used to be my way of proving I belonged, chasing credibility to silence the doubts. But now, I was living my truth, and that felt like enough. Still, I thought about that 19-year-old girl building a Shopify site on a borrowed laptop. The woman who paid her dad's mortgage while he called her a dropout. And I said yes. The night of the speech, I stood backstage, heart pounding, palms sweaty. Not because of the crowd, but because I was about to be raw. Then they called my name. The lights were warm, the room hushed, and I started. I used to think power was about being accepted, celebrated, having your name in the right places. I was wrong. Real power is when you stop trying to fit into a family that never made space for the real you. I paused, watching heads nod, some eyes glistening. Women who'd built empires. Women who'd buried dreams for family peace. Women who'd stayed quiet too long. You don't have to shrink to belong, I said. You don't have to apologize for taking up space, not when you've earned every bit of it. By the end, the room was on its feet, clapping, but it was more than that. It was connection. Have you ever shared something so true it felt like you were speaking to your younger self? Afterward, a young woman came up, tears in her eyes. I left home at 18, she said. They never forgave me, but tonight I think I forgave myself. That moment told me I'd made the right call, not just with the speech, but with every hard choice that got me here. Then, out of nowhere, an envelope arrived. No return address, just a note in stiff cursive. We saw your talk. We're glad you're doing well. No apology, no mention of the past, no signature. But I knew it was them. I read it once, then lit a match and burned it. Not out of spite, but for closure. I didn't need their words to know I was whole. Have you ever had to let go of something to feel free? The mentorship program kept growing. We expanded to 3 new cities, matched over 100 self-taught founders with companies that saw their worth beyond a resume. One mentee got into a startup accelerator. Another scored a 6-figure deal. They still send me updates. Not for funding, but to share their wins, to show that belief matters. It changes lives. It changed mine. What's something you've built that's made a difference for someone else? Drop it in the comments. I'm all ears. One spring evening, I had a few folks over. Emma, Miranda, some mentees, and colleagues who'd become friends. After dessert, we sat under string lights, the ocean humming nearby. Miranda looked at me and asked, "Do you ever regret walking away?" I thought hard. I regret that it had to come to that, I said. I regret we couldn't grow together, but I don't regret choosing peace. Emma raised her glass. To peace you don't have to earn. We toasted, and I smiled, feeling the warmth of it all. When's the time you chose peace over pain? Tell me below. I still think about Dad sometimes. Wonder if he replays that dinner, those words. If he sees my face when he said them. I'll probably never know. But here's what I do know. I'm not a lowlife. I'm not a disappointment. I'm not here to carry their broken expectations. I'm me. And I'm free. If you've stuck with me this far, thank you. Maybe you've been the one holding it all together, never fully seen. Maybe you've built something incredible with no one cheering. Maybe you're learning, like me, that freedom sometimes means walking away. You're not selfish. You're not cold. You're just done settling for love without respect. So here's to you, to the freedom you're fighting for, the peace that's waiting. Drop a comment and share your story. What's one step you've taken to choose yourself? 1 year, 5 months, and 13 days. That's how long it's been since I left that dining room. Since my dad's words cut me deep. Since I stopped begging for a love I couldn't even recognize anymore. And now, I'm grateful for it. Not because it was fair, but because it taught me what real love looks like. Have you ever had a moment that broke you open, only to show you who you really are? Stay with me, because this is the end of my story. For now, and it's about finding freedom. If this resonates, drop a comment below and tell me, what's your moment of breaking free? That Thanksgiving changed everything. I used to think family was untouchable, that blood meant you had to keep showing up, no matter how much it hurt. I wore that belief like a medal, letting it bruise me again and again. But here's the truth I've learned. Love without respect is just a fancy word for obligation. Real family? It's not just DNA. It's the people who see you, cheer for you, and love you even when it doesn't serve them. That kind of love is rare, but it's out there. And I found it when I stopped making excuses for those who couldn't give it. Has anyone else had to redefine what family means to them? The woman I am today doesn't walk into rooms hoping for a nod of approval. She walks in knowing she belongs. She doesn't measure her worth by silence or applause. She knows who she is, what she's built, and what she's still becoming. She doesn't shrink when someone says, "But they're your parents." Because being a daughter doesn't mean you owe anyone your soul. And walking away? That's not weakness, it's courage. Have you ever had to walk away to save yourself? Share your story below, I'm listening. Every week, I get emails from people who've seen my talks, read my articles, or heard me on a podcast. Some are young, just realizing their family's love feels like a script they didn't write. Others are older, still hoping for that one day when their parents say, "I see you." I write back when I can, not with answers, but with what I've learned. You don't have to burn bridges, but you don't have to keep crossing ones that crumble. You can choose peace, even if no one gets it. You can stop explaining yourself to people who never listened. And you can build something beautiful without their cheers. What's one boundary you've set that changed everything? The second year in Florida brought more than calm. It brought wholeness. I started painting again. Something I hadn't touched since high school. Not for likes or praise, just for the way colors on a canvas make time vanish. I joined a nonprofit helping single moms learn financial literacy. I mentored a woman who reminded me of myself at 23. Sharp, scared, but unstoppable. Watching her nail her first client pitch, seeing that spark in her eyes when she said, "You showed me I could do it," hit me deep. I don't just want success anymore. I want legacy. I want to be the voice that says, "You can," because someone once said it to me, and it changed everything. Who's been that voice for you? Drop their name in the comments. I wish I could say my parents came around, that we had that big, tearful coffee shop moment I used to dream of. But they didn't. They're still in that house, telling themselves whatever story helps them sleep. And I'm okay with that. I don't need their eyes to know I'm real. Healing doesn't need their permission. It just needs your honesty. And sometimes letting go is the most honest thing you can do. Have you ever let go of a dream to make room for reality? I keep a journal in my nightstand, leather-bound and worn from use. On the first page, I wrote, "What would it look like to live as if nothing was missing?" Every morning, I answer it in tiny ways. A slow breakfast, a call with a mentee, a sunset walk with sand between my toes. These aren't big things, but they're mine, and they're enough. What's one small thing that makes you feel whole? Share it below. If you're still here, maybe you see yourself in me. Maybe you're the one who's always there, fixing, holding it together, but never fully seen. Maybe you've poured your heart into love that never felt like yours. Maybe you're tired, and that's okay. Hear me. You're not broken. You're not ungrateful for wanting peace. You're not selfish for choosing yourself. You can stop trying to earn love that doesn't fit. You can put down the weight that was never yours. You can start again. When's the last time you gave yourself permission to just be? Last month, I stood on my deck, wine in hand, barefoot, watching stars spill across the gulf. I whispered, I am free. And I meant it. Not because life's perfect, but because freedom isn't about having nothing to lose. It's about not losing yourself to be loved. Have you found that kind of freedom yet? Tell me about it in the comments. So, wherever you are, on the edge of a big choice, grieving a quiet goodbye, or still figuring out who you're becoming, I hope you hold on to this. Sometimes the bravest thing is walking away without making a scene. Sometimes the best revenge is a life lived softly, fully, on your terms. And sometimes the family you choose loves you in ways the one you were born into never could. Thank you for walking this road with me. Your stories, your strength, they mean the world. If this moved you, share it. Not for me, but for the part of you that still needs to know you're not alone. And if you haven't yet, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and tap the bell for more stories that cut deep, heal slow, and set us free. Let's keep telling the truths that hurt, the ones that mend, the ones that make us whole. I'll see you in the next one. It's been almost 2 years since I last talked to my mom. That Thanksgiving mess still stings, when my dad called me a lowlife and kicked me out of their house, even after everything I'd done for them. Mom? She didn't say a word. Not one call, text, or even a birthday message followed. For a long time, I convinced myself I was fine with it. I didn't need closure from a woman who stood by while her husband tore me apart. But some nights I'd catch myself staring at my phone, wondering if she ever thought about me at all. Then, out of the blue, a letter showed up on a Tuesday morning. A real handwritten letter in a plain white envelope. No return address, postmarked from some tiny town in Georgia. The second I saw her handwriting, my heart dropped. I'd know those careful cursive loops, especially her G's, anywhere. I held that letter for what felt like forever before I could bring myself to open it. My life's been good lately. Really good. I've got my morning routine down. Coffee on the porch, checking emails, a walk along the beach behind my Florida house before work. Mentally, emotionally, financially, I'm in the best place I've ever been. But that letter? It rattled something deep inside me I thought was long gone. Finally, I sat down and tore it open. Dear Natalie, I don't know how to start this. I don't even know if you'll read it. But I've been carrying something heavy for a long time, and I need to say it, even if it's too late. I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you. I should have stopped him, but I didn't. And that's on me. I stopped there, my fingers gripping the paper so tight my knuckles turned white. My breath caught in my chest. She went on. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about what happened, about the look on your face when he said those awful things, about how you walked away. I should have run after you. I didn't. I let you leave thinking I didn't care. But I did. I do. I just didn't know how to be the mom you needed. I read that letter 3 times. By the end, my coffee was stone cold, and the waves were crashing louder behind my house. The last line hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. If you'll let me, I'd like to see you. No expectations, no questions, just coffee. I'll be in town next weekend. That was it. No phone number, no hotel details, just a vague promise and a chance. I folded the letter and set it on the table. My heart was all over the place. Was this for real? Had she finally realized what she let happen? Or was this just some attempt to pull me back in now that I'd finally found some peace? And why now? What did she want from me? More importantly, was I ready to face her again? I swore I wasn't going to show up. All week leading up to that Saturday, I repeated it like a mantra. I had a million excuses ready. Work was crazy with a new investor pitch. My assistant needed me for a product launch. I even told myself the dog wasn't feeling great, which was a stretch since I don't own a dog. But no matter how many reasons I stacked up to stay away, something kept tugging at me, deep down. What if she meant it this time? What if for once she wasn't hiding behind Dad's anger? I chose a coffee shop I loved, a quiet little spot tucked away in a part of town that felt real, not flashy. I wanted it to feel human, like neutral territory. I got there 10 minutes early, my nerves more frayed than they were before my first big $1 million deal. I grabbed a table in the far corner, facing the door, not sure if she'd even come. Part of me hoped she wouldn't. That way, I could say I tried, close the book, and move on. But then the door swung open, and there she was. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked older, thinner, like life had worn her down. Her golden hair was now laced with silver, pulled back in a low bun. She clung to her purse like it was keeping her afloat. When her eyes found mine, I saw it all. Fear, hesitation, and something heavier. Guilt. She walked over slowly, and I stood up before I even realized what I was doing. "Natalie," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hi, Mom," I managed, nodding. We sat down, and the silence between us was so thick I could hear the clock ticking behind the counter. She stared at her hands, and I noticed her fingers were bare. No rings, not even her wedding band. The barista dropped off the coffee I'd ordered ahead of time. Mom wrapped both hands around her cup, not sipping, just holding it like it was an anchor. "I didn't know if you'd come," she said softly. "Neither did I admitted. She gave a small, almost sad smile. I meant every word in that letter. I didn't say anything. I wasn't ready to hand her that piece of me yet. I was scared, she went on, her voice trembling. Of your father, of what would happen if I stood up to him. But mostly I was scared of facing the truth in your eyes. That I'd failed you. I really looked at her then, maybe for the first time. She wasn't the mom I grew up with. The one who always looked flawless, said the right things at dinner parties, smiled for the neighbors, but stayed quiet when I needed her voice. This was a woman coming apart at the seams, trying to piece herself back together. "Why now?" I asked, my voice steady but curious. She let out a shaky breath. "Because he left." Those words hit like a slap. "Left?" She nodded. 3 months ago. He met someone, younger, prettier, from his office. I blinked, not because I cared about his new fling, but because of what that meant for her. "And now that he's gone, you finally get to feel something?" I asked, sharper than I intended. Her eyes filled with tears. "Number, now that he's gone, I see what it cost me to stay." We sat there, quiet again. This time, the silence didn't feel so heavy. It felt raw, real. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said after a moment. "I don't need money. I don't want to move in. I just wanted to sit across from you, look you in the eye and say I was wrong. I see you now, and I'm sorry." She reached into her purse and pulled out an old photo. It was me, 10 years old, in a school play, wearing a paper crown and grinning like the world was mine. "I keep this in my wallet," she said, her voice breaking. Even when I didn't reach out, especially then. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to sob. But mostly, I just stared at that little girl in the photo. The one I used to be. The one who waited so long for someone to see her. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in years, it felt like I wasn't carrying the weight of it all alone. I didn't sleep a wink that night. Her words kept spinning in my head, like an old song stuck on repeat. "I see you. I'm sorry. But where was that woman when I was 17 and Dad said I'd never be anything? Where was she when I was holed up in my first tiny apartment, eating ramen and pouring my heart into a business she never thought would make it? Where was that apology when I stood on a stage, accepting the Entrepreneur of the Year award, scanning the crowd for just one face I knew? Can you imagine that kind of ache? The kind that lingers not just from pain, but from absence. Now that I'd finally stopped needing her, she decides to show up. Why does the past always pick the worst time to come calling? I stood on my balcony, staring at the ocean as the sky hung heavy with pre-dawn gray. Florida's so peaceful this time of year. Quiet, safe, it's mine. But peace? It has a way of getting loud when old ghosts knock. Have you ever felt that? When everything you've built feels shaky just because someone from way back walks in? The next morning, I found myself digging through old boxes. I thought they were just tax papers and leases. But no, there were photos. Snapshots of a little girl who still believed her mom would always have her back. I picked one up. Me, maybe 5, curled up asleep on the couch, mom's hand resting so gently on my hair. That kind of softness? I hadn't felt it in years. And God help me, I hated how much I missed it. Does that ever happen to you? When a memory hits so hard you're not sure if you want to hold it close or shove it away? Later that day, my phone rang. It was her. She'd never called since that awful Thanksgiving 2 years ago. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. So careful, like the word might shatter if she spoke too loud. I almost hung up right then. But there was something in her voice. Not desperation, not pity, but something quieter. Humble, maybe. "I don't want to push," she said. "But if you're up for it, I'd love to take a walk with you. Nothing big. Just a walk." I said yes, then regretted it the second I hung up. Why did I do that? Was I really ready to let her in? I showed up to the trail near my house with my walls up, guarded like I was heading into a battle. She smiled but didn't try to hug me, which oddly made me respect her a little. We walked for 20 minutes, barely saying a word. It was like walking with a ghost, a version of her I used to dream up as a kid. Soft-spoken, thoughtful, actually there. Then she broke the quiet. "Do you ever miss me?" she asked. I froze mid-step. What kind of question is that? She looked away, her voice small. The kind I ask when I already know the answer. "I just wanted to hear you say it." And that's when I lost it. "Of course I missed you," I snapped, the words spilling out like they'd been waiting years to escape. "I missed you at every graduation, every heartbreak, every win. I missed you when I crashed and burned, when I picked myself back up. I missed you when I needed a mom and got nothing but silence." My voice cracked, and I hated it. Have you ever had to say something that true? Something that hurts so much it feels like it's carving you out?
She just stood there, taking it. No excuses, no pointing fingers, just listening. "I don't know how to make it right," she said finally, "but I want to try." I turned away, my chest tight. Because the truth was I didn't know what I wanted. I'd built a whole life without her. A business, a home, a version of myself that didn't need her approval or her cheers. Forgiveness, I was starting to see, wasn't about saying, "It's fine." It was about letting go of the dream that the past could be different. And I wasn't sure I could let that go yet. Could you? If you were me standing there with all that history, what would you do? We finished the walk without another word. When she climbed into her rental car, she looked back at me, like she thought it might be the last time. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. But I didn't turn and walk away either. And maybe, just maybe, that was a start. What do you think? Does a moment like that mean something, or is it just another step in the mess of figuring it all out? A few days went by before she reached out again. No phone call, no text, just a plain little box left on my porch early one morning. No name, just a tiny tag with one word in that familiar cursive from her letter. For us. Can you feel that moment? When something so small holds so much weight it stops you in your tracks? I stood there, staring at it for what felt like forever, my heart doing somersaults. It wasn't heavy when I finally picked it up, but it carried something deeper, like memories you can't shake. I brought it inside and set it on my kitchen table, my coffee going cold, my pulse racing. What could she possibly have left for me now? Another letter? More photos to twist the knife? Or something I wasn't ready to face? Have you ever had to open something like that knowing it might change everything? I peeled the box open, slow and careful, like I was afraid of what might spill out. Inside were 3 things. First, a framed photo of us at the beach. I must have been 6, my arms flung around her neck, both of us laughing, sunburned, and carefree. A version of us I'd forgotten could even exist. Looking at it stung, like a memory you love and hate all at once. Next was a thick manila envelope. I tipped it out and papers spilled across the table. Handwritten journals, legal documents, and something that made my hands go numb. An affidavit. Heron dated just a month after I walked out of their house. It laid out years of verbal abuse, manipulation, control. Not mine, though. Heron Dad didn't just silence her around me. He'd been chipping away at her for decades. She'd started divorce papers back then, but never filed them. Until now. At the bottom, in pencil, was a shaky note. I started finding my voice the day you found yours. Can you imagine carrying that kind of truth? Thinking someone chose silence when they were fighting to survive? I sat there, the floor feeling like it shifted under me. All these years, I thought she was weak, complicit, just standing by while I broke. Maybe she was silent. But maybe silence was her only shield back then. It's funny how one piece of paper can rewrite everything you thought you knew, isn't it? The last thing in the box was a small velvet pouch. I tipped it into my palm and out slid a necklace. Not just any necklace, Grandma's. The one that gleamed in every Christmas photo from when I was a kid. The one Mom promised I'd wear on my wedding day. It had been gone for years. I held it, the cool metal heavy in my hand, and just sat with it. Was this her saying sorry? A gift to bridge the gap? Or something more, like she was trying to give back what we'd lost? There was no note with it, and maybe that was okay. Some things don't need words. That night, I curled up with the box in my lap, tears drying on my face. Then, one morning, an envelope slipped under my door, thick and creamy, with a soft elegance that made me pause. I picked it up, turning it over like it might bite. My name was written across the front in gold ink, bold and deliberate. Inside was a card, crisp and formal. You're invited to the gallery opening of Marianne Patterson, featuring The Hidden Years, a visual journey through silence, resilience, and rediscovery. My heart stopped cold. My mom? An art show? The woman whose life was all about tea sets, pearl earrings, and keeping her thoughts locked up tight? Since when was she an artist? What else had she been hiding all these years? Tucked inside was a note in her handwriting. I've been painting for years, in secret, in silence. But now I want you to see me. All of me. I stood there, frozen, the words sinking in. She'd kept this whole part of herself buried, and now she was laying it bare, for me. Can you imagine finding out someone you thought you knew had a whole secret world inside them? The show was set for a Saturday evening at a small gallery just outside town. I held the invitation, my heart pounding like I was about to pitch to a room full of investors. Was I ready to see her like this? To see myself through her eyes? I told myself I'd sleep on it, but by Friday, I was already picking out a dress, my hands shaking as I zipped it up. Why was I so nervous? What was I hoping to find? The gallery was small but beautiful, with white walls and soft lights that made the space feel almost holy. People milled around, sipping wine, murmuring about the art with that quiet reverence you only get in places like this. I walked in alone, my heels clicking too loud on the hardwood, scanning the room for… what? I wasn't even sure. Then I saw it. A big painting on the far wall. A little girl in a yellow dress sitting alone on the edge of a staircase, head bowed, forgotten in the corner of some grand house. I didn't need a label to know it was me. My throat tightened, and I stood there, staring, like I could fall into that moment and feel that loneliness all over again. Have you ever seen yourself in someone else's story like that? So raw it hurts? Next to it was another painting. The same girl, a little older, reaching for someone just out of frame. The caption read, "Almost." My heart twisted. And then, the last one. A grown woman, her back to the viewer, walking into a storm with her shoulders squared, her head high. The caption, "Found." I felt something break open inside me, like a dam I didn't know was there. How could she capture so much of me without ever saying a word? I didn't hear her come up behind me. "Natalie," she said, her voice soft but steady. I turned, and there she was, nervous, hopeful, real in a way I'd never seen her. "I didn't paint those for the world," she said. "I painted them for you." I didn't know what to say. My words were stuck, tangled up in years of hurt and hope. So I just stood there, my eyes locked on hers. And then, after what felt like forever, I said the one thing I hadn't said in years. "I see you." Her eyes welled up, tears catching the light. "I finally see you too," she whispered, her voice breaking. What do you do in a moment like that? When the walls you've built start to crack, and you're standing there, raw and open, with someone who's trying to meet you halfway. I didn't have answers, but for the first time, I felt like we were both trying to find them. Could that be enough? Or is it just the start of something neither of us can fully predict? We sat on a bench just outside the gallery, the last of the guests trickling away into the night. The sky had softened into this gorgeous lavender glow, that kind of twilight where every moment feels heavier, like it's whispering something you need to hear. My mom and I didn't talk much. She offered me her coat when a cool breeze kicked up and I didn't take it, but I gave her a small smile. That tiny gesture? It wasn't everything. But oh, it was something. Can you feel that? Those quiet moments that hold more than years of words ever could? I used to think healing would come with some grand apology, perfectly wrapped, every word just right, erasing all the hurt like it never happened. But that moment, it never showed up, and maybe it never will. Healing, I'm learning, doesn't come in a neat package or wait for you to be ready. It sneaks in through the cracks, in a coffee shop where silence speaks louder than words, in a painting that carries all the things she couldn't say, in standing next to someone you thought you'd lost forever, and realizing they're not the villain in your story anymore. Have you ever felt that shift? When the weight you've carried starts to lift, even just a little?
I didn't forgive her because she earned it. I forgave her because I deserved to breathe again. Peace isn't something you sit around waiting for. It's something you fight for. Something you build. One boundary at a time. One messy, heart-wrenching conversation at a time. One deep, shaky breath at a time. And in that moment, sitting there with her, I felt it starting to take root. Isn't that what we're all chasing? A little corner of peace to call our own? Driving home that night, with Florida's warm breeze pouring through my open window, I caught my reflection in the side mirror. Not the little girl who begged to be seen. Not the daughter waiting for someone to tell her she was enough. But a woman who knew her worth, who'd fought her way back to herself. A woman who'd finally come home. Can you picture that feeling? When you look at yourself and realize you're exactly where you're meant to be? Thank you for walking this journey with me. This story, it's not just mine. It's ours because we've all got those moments that break us and build us back stronger. If it moved you, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story. And if this touched your heart, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next story. We've got so many more to share, and I can't wait to have you along for the ride. Until next time, take care of your heart. You deserve nothing less.